There is a paradox in life that perhaps all of us have felt. We live in a world more connected by technology than ever, yet often we feel more distant amidst the lively parties and the ceaseless streams of news. We sometimes hear a silence echoing from the depths, an invisible void, that is loneliness. Not necessarily physical solitude, but the feeling of being misunderstood, unseen, or carrying a burden that cannot be shared. And perhaps, to find the path to healing, we need the courage to look to the stories of old, where similar heartaches found their way out through unexpected encounters. In ancient Roman times, within old Jewish society, there was a sentence more frightening than imprisonment: the disease of leprosy. This illness did not just ravage the skin, it turned a person into an outcast in the truest sense of the word. According to the law, the afflicted had to tear their clothes, leave their heads bare, and cover their mouths as they walked, crying out, "Unclean, unclean." The most terrible pain was perhaps not on their ulcerated skin, but in being stripped of the most basic human right, the right to connect. In this context of despair, one man did the unthinkable. He not only approached the crowd, but knelt before Jesus. Then, something deeply moving happened. Jesus, instead of recoiling, was moved with compassion, reached out his hand, and touched him. That touch, oh, that touch shattered the wall of disgust that society had built. Even before it healed the disease, it restored his dignity. But ironically, some walls are even stronger, not built by others, but those we build ourselves from silver, gold, and power. Let us go to the prosperous city of Jericho, where there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, a position that guaranteed him a life of luxury. But every time he stepped onto the street, that wealth became a curse. He was a man who grew rich on the backs of his own people, a living symbol of injustice and betrayal, for he collected taxes for the occupying Roman forces. In the eyes of everyone, he was a traitor, a legalized thief. So, when news spread that Jesus was passing through, he was pushed to the fringe by his own people who believed he was unworthy. Small in stature, obscured and despised, Zacchaeus did something unbelievable. He cast aside all dignity, ran ahead, and climbed a sycamore fig tree by the road. And then Jesus stopped. He looked up, a truly meaningful act when the world usually looked down on him and called him by name. He did not call him tax collector. He called his name. and invited himself to his house. The wall of loneliness that Zacchaeus had built around himself with money crumbled in that moment. To be seen for who you truly are and accepted, that is indeed a liberation. But what happens when the thing we hide isn't a title despised by the world, but a shameful past we dare not face? Let us go to an ancient well in Samaria. At midday, the sun was at its peak, the air scorching hot. A woman chose this hour to draw water, an act that in itself told a story of hiding. She was fleeing the judging eyes, the whispers about her life. With 5 husbands who had come and gone, and a current life without proper standing, she carried the heavy burden of shame. And then she met a Jewish man resting there, a man who, by all customs, should never have spoken to her. When he gently revealed that he knew her past, it was perhaps her most fearful moment, expecting the familiar condemnation. But no, he simply showed her that, even knowing all the scars and hidden corners of her life, he was still there, still valued her, and offered her a new hope. It is a strange and wondrous thing how truth revealed in love can have such healing power. But perhaps the most frightening loneliness comes not from sickness, wealth, or the past. It comes from the silence after a victory, when a person has given their all, only to find they have nothing left inside. The prophet Elijah had just experienced the peak of his career. On Mount Carmel, he had single-handedly defeated 450 false prophets. He was a hero, but immediately after, a single threat from Queen Jezebel caused the hero to completely collapse. He fled into the desert, depleted both physically and spiritually, and begged to die, lamenting, "I am the only one left." It was the cry of burnout, of a lone soldier on the battlefield. After the war is over, the Lord's healing for him was not a rallying cry. He began with the most basic things, sending an angel to bring him bread and water, and then letting him sleep. After restoring his body, he then guided his soul, not in the windstorm or the earthquake, but in a still, small voice. So, what are we to do when we face the void within ourselves? The stories of old do not offer a magic formula, but they do show us a path. Healing always begins with a step, an encounter. For ourselves, perhaps the first step is the courage to acknowledge our need. The courage of the leper who dared to step out of hiding. The courage of Zacchaeus, who dared to do something unusual to seek what he was missing. The courage to allow ourselves to be imperfect, to allow ourselves to rest like Elijah. Be gentle with yourself and realize that the longing to connect is a legitimate need, not a weakness. And for those around us, we can become a part of their healing journey. We can be the one who offers the touch of acceptance instead of judgment. We can be the one who sees and calls a friend by name when they feel invisible. We can be the one who listens to someone's story without rushing to give advice. Sometimes, your quiet, sincere presence is the still, small voice that a depleted soul needs to hear. The journey through loneliness may not be easy, and at times it feels like a desert. But please believe that you are not the only one walking this path. And in every story of healing, hope always begins when one person dares to step out and another dares to reach out. This is not a journey you have to walk alone.